The data flow mapping tool will give you a nice introduction. I'm sure many of you who have already either been on a demo of this or you've watched the pre-recorded videos on our YouTube channel or you've had a chance to play around with the tool itself now. So hopefully this will just give you a bit more insight into the tool itself and all the features that it does contain and that you can use for your organisation. So, just our introduction. So in today's discussion, the order that we'll go through. So I'll just give you an introduction to the tool itself. We'll just look over a brief case study. It just mainly highlights the importance of going through and going through your processes and seeing how you're processing that personal data, especially in today's world where, you know, GDPR has come in to play and everyone does need to comply with that. We'll then go through accessing the tool itself. We'll go over the user management section. I'll then actually demonstrate how to create a map from scratch. So we'll go through the process of that and actually using the tool itself. And then I'll go over the final outcome. So I'll show you the report that you can pull off from the data flow mapping tool. So for those of you who have had the tool for a little while or have had the demo on the data flow mapping tool any more than 2 weeks ago, the reports that you see now, they will be slightly different. This is due to the recent updates that we pushed out. And as I'm going through the tool, I will point out to you which are the new features of this tool. For anyone who's never seen it before, you know, it's good to know which new features we've got out. And for everyone who has seen the older version, you'll be able to see where these new features have come from, essentially. Finally, we will have a Q&A session. So like I mentioned, if you do have any questions throughout, please pop them into the chat box. Feel free to add the section that it's on if you would like to reference it. I will read out all of the questions, so if there is anything that you wanted to ask a bit more privately, that's fine. If you could do that or make a note, and then I won't read that out and I'll get back to you after the webinar. But other than that, I will read out the questions just so if you're rewatching the recorded version of this, it does make sense and I'm not just reading out the answers. So going through an introduction of the data flow map. So we've got a nice definition there. Essentially, our mapping tool is showing you how the personal data flows through a particular process of your organisation and how it is transferred from each of your assets. It is designed to simplify the process of creating the data flow map. So rather than Excel spreadsheets, which are really hard to maintain, keep up to date with your growing organisation, this tool really does simplify that process for you and clearly demonstrates how you do comply with that GDPR. You know, GDPR is a regulation, you have to comply with it, so all organisations should really be creating those data flow maps. It sits within our Cyber Comply portal, so this is online, cloud-based, and our Cyber Comply also hosts our compliance manager side of things, which does work nicely with our data flow mapping tool as well, so these both sit on there. So an instruction on how or the things you need to actually create your data flow map itself. So before beginning, you need to know essentially what every step of your process is. So we do sort of say, you know, having workshops is a good idea to go around everyone within your organisation, and particularly with the heads of each department, perhaps the stakeholders, just to speak to everyone who's involved to see, really narrow down and make sure you have every step of the process. So every part of that process where the personal data items are actually being moved through and whoever they reach. Next one, who carries out each step. So again, that sort of coincides with going to the heads of department. They're really good people to start with to talk to. And again, what assets are used to carry out each step of the process. You'll need all of this information before you can go into the tool and really start creating that process map. It's good to have all of the relevant information. So we'll just briefly mention a case study. So I'm sure many of you are aware of this, seen it on LinkedIn or the news. So only last week, British Airways, so obviously humongous company, they revealed that 380,000 customers, their payment card records have been hacked over 15 days. So, you know, it just really highlights how important it is to show your GDPR compliance and also not just demonstrate it for external bodies, but also for your own organization, just so you know clearly that you are complying with it and you can see clearly, you know, where all that personal data items are going through. And it just another hint here, you know, all of the data flows that include personal data should be mapped or should be included. Yeah, so it's just good food for thought. So then we've got our how the data flow map and tool can help your organization essentially. So again, it shows the flow of that map, how the information from one location to another, so that could be between your two assets. Again, identify the users for the data and also the basis for you processing that personal data as well. So whether that is a lawful basis or a legitimate interest, etc. The new features of our map, these tie the critical information about the recipients and the retention periods with categories of your personal data. So this is actually a key part of complying with Article 30 of the GDPR. So that's one of our new features that you know, really helps. And also another new feature, you can actually add your customized personal data items now and also data subjects. So this just helps reflect your organization better. So moving on to using the tool itself. So again, it's easy to use. It's very simplified. I'll show you when we go through it. You'll just see it's very logical, the steps you need to take to get into your process map. It's geared for repeatability. So you're able to completely clone a process map. So you can edit those slight changes you might need to without having to go in and completely start from scratch, which is very long-winded and also takes up your precious time as well. Also, it logs your personal data items. So especially when you pull off the report, you do actually generate an inventory of that personal data. And like I mentioned a few moments ago, really specifying what that lawful basis is for processing that data itself and the categories of those data subjects. So it will generate data flow reports. So you can easy to read, you can show this to your stakeholders, for example. It embeds your data protection just by the design of the tool. And also it gives optional access to your security controls. So how I mentioned as well earlier, Compliance Manager, our other tool that sits on that Cyber Comply portal. This allows you to easily keep a record of what controls you've already implemented, your organisation has planned to implement, if any are excluded or not applicable to your organisation. That helps you give access to those controls there. So the tool comes with up to 5 users access to the portal as a standard. They can simultaneously access the tool. However, if you do want more than 5, if you've got a lot of people working on that particular project, you are able to purchase these in bundles of 5 for additional users. You also can archive your users. If you would like to archive any of those users, then that's something you would need to come to our support team for, and we can do that for you as well. It essentially means the user account is dormant, they can no longer go on, but it won't delete their account. So all the information associated with that, you know, won't be deleted, and how it mentions there, if they need access again, that's fine, we can reassign that to them. So going on to the setup. So in a moment, I will actually switch to the data flow mapping tool itself. So if anyone on the webinar this afternoon is going through and playing along with me while I'm doing it, now's a good time to set up the portal if that's what you wish to do. So essentially we'll go through and we'll just, you'd need to log into the Cyber Comply portal. So when you first purchase the tool itself, I'm sure anyone who has got that would see, you'll get an invitation email with a link that will take you straight through. You log onto your Cyber Comply portal. Then navigate to the data flow mapping tool, so essentially the other side of the Cyber Comply, so you'll see the nice logo nice and clearly. Click on the home page button, and then we'll start the processes that you want to map. So you go through and we'll show you how to do that. Just a little note here, the process owner that you're using when creating the map, which I will demonstrate, the process owner is the individual or the role responsible for running that particular process that you're creating your map on. So now we shall go to the map itself. So like I mentioned, this is our Cyber Comply portal. So you can see we've got our compliance manager on the left-hand side and the all-important data flow mapping tool on the right-hand side. So before we go into the tool itself, I will go to the top here. So as you can see, you've got your user details, account summary, and settings. So first of all, we'll go into our account summary. So it's going to ask me to log in. And as you can see, this is where you can add your additional users. You can also edit the roles of those users as you're adding them. So just the organization details. So this is the account when you set it up. These are the details that will show here. You've then got your licenses here. So it will show what you've purchased, and also as it is an annual subscription, if you looked here, it will be able to tell you the date that you have purchased that and when it's available too. So at the moment, you can see I'm the only user on my account. However, to add a user, if you select the plus here, then all you need to do is add their email address. This email address would then go from the Cyber Comply portal, and that would send you that invitation to that email address you've added. And then the interesting bit about the roles here. So we will start from the organisation administrator. So this will gain full access to the tool. You can change the users, you can edit their roles, etc. And essentially you would be the person in charge of that annual subscription as well. And you can go and use any form of the tool, edit any maps, processes, assets, etc. We then have our contributor. So our contributor, for example, if you have any consultants that are working on your project, they can go onto the map if they're a contributor, and they can work on that map and those processes, but they wouldn't actually have access to the user accounts themselves. So if you do set a user as a contributor, they can't then go onto this, and they can't add any users, they can't change the roles. They're essentially only there to work on the project itself. Again, moving on to read-only, so kind of self-explanatory on this one. It's good if you would like your stakeholders to have access to the tool. They can go in, they can have a look at your data flow maps that you've created, but as it kind of says on the tin, they won't actually be able to change anything or have any input. They can just view how the project's getting on. And then revoked, how we mentioned, you remove their access to the tool. However, this user won't be deleted, so all the information that goes with that user account, that will still be on there, and you can use that no problem. So we'll just come out of here. So that's the account summary section of the tool. We'll then just go on to user details. So if there's any of the consultants on this webinar this afternoon, this is a key one for you guys. Essentially here, if we look down, you can see the account. Between all the clients that you're working with, you can essentially flick between your clients, and once you finish working on that particular project, you can remove that account if you finish working with that client. So then we'll just go into the settings section before we go into the tool itself. So from here we have our classifications. So we have the standard classifications that we can set, either the confidential, private, public, or restricted. Now we can toggle any of these on or off, whichever is not applicable, or you can remove it like so. You can also add another classification, and you can tailor this and add a custom classification if you wish. Moving down, we have custom regions, like so. So, for example, your location may be, if I go down to here, it may be the United States of America, but you really want to hone down that custom region because that's actually, say, where your asset is. And, you know, America is a very big place. So, you know, you really want to make that more specific just to detail your report even more. So you can do so like this, and then you just select save and add custom region. Again, any of the custom regions that you have added, you're able to toggle on or off at any point as well. We've then got our contact details. So for the controller, you can use, the controller will be automatically the account that's set up. So you can add, or if you can add the details like so. Then to add your data protection officer details, select add data protection officer. It will then ask you to just add the name, the address line, city, postcode, etc. And again, for your representative, if you're working with a representative on the project between your controller and processor, then this is where you would do so. Any of the information that you add here will pre-populate onto adding the processes, which I will show you. So when you then select your data protection officer at that section, the information you put in here will then go and add there. So that's the settings section. We'll go into the data flow mapping tool itself. So it's just loading here. So just to just sort of a recap. So we've gone over how to change your user accounts, how to add other users, what those specific roles as well, what they stand for, what they mean, and the custom settings. So those customized personal data items and those customized data subjects, they're all new parts of the tool. So if we go first into organization assets. So when you start the tool, I'm sure anyone who has already purchased it will know that we don't give you a pre-populated asset library. This is just every organization has, you know, their own unique assets, and that's for you, so you can add them individually like so. So before the webinar, I've gone on and I've added these. There are two ways you can add your assets. You can either create new, which I will run through. So if we select create new, it will then ask us for our asset type. So for example, we'll select filing system. It's then going to ask us for a reference of our asset. So for example, our filing system, this could be back office, like so. It will then ask us for the operator, so who operates this particular asset. And so for this example, I'm going to select the controller, like so. It will then ask us to select where that is located. So for example, keep it nice and simple, we'll select it as the United Kingdom. So once you select, this will then populate the asset you've just created onto your asset library down the side like so. So you can see like here. Now the other way you can do it is if you select import assets, and it will bring up another window. So you can download an Excel template from here. This will then open up. You can then, on your Excel template, add in all the relevant information of your asset library and then import it and drag and drop the file. So for example, oh, apologies. So for example, I have already created one, so I will show you. So if we choose a file to upload, I'll go to here, we'll then import like so. Once you're happy with that, that will then import. And then if we look here, we can see that it's appeared on our asset library. So really, whichever way fits your organisation better, you're more than welcome to use. So if I walk you through the top here, so we've just got a nice little search bar here. It just saves time to search on your asset library, for example, if you already know what asset that you're looking for and you want to add that additional information onto. Moving across, you've got your implementation chart, just giving you a nice overview of out of the asset owners in your organisation, sort of what percentage they own or what assets are under them. You've then got some hints and tips. So throughout the tool, whenever you see this light bulb icon, if you want just a few hints, just to sort of jog your memory or just spur on some thinking of this particular point in the page, then that's always handy for hints and tips on the light bulb icon. You've then got the selection to select all of your assets and open up the new window like so. And then you can add more information on those like so. So we'll open up your whole entire asset library. So I'll just deselect that and I'll run through a couple with you like so. So if you select on the assets here, it will bring up a further information panel to your right hand side like so. So as we can see through here. So we have the option to close this particular asset we've got open here. We can close all of them if we've got the whole entire library open. We can close them all other than this particular one. We can edit an asset here. It is worth noting if you edit an asset at this point, fine, that's no problem. However, this will be a global change. So whatever process that that particular asset is used in, that will have the same change. So just bear that in mind, like so. Also, you can delete an asset. You can't delete anything by accident, so don't worry. It's not easy to do. When you do select delete, you'll get another pop-up just to confirm that that is what you want to do. However, if it's being used in a process, it will tell you, like so, that you can't delete this particular asset as it is actually being used in a process at this time. Going through. So these, again, these are all nice to haves at the bottom here. I'll go through them in more detail on the organisation process side of things. But we'll just go through, flick through. Again, this also coincides with the compliance manager side of the cyber comply. So we've got any related controls, any related legal requirements, related tasks, any processes that this asset is related to or is currently in. We've got a nice little audit trail here. So again, you can have up to 5 users on the tool. You could all be going in, changing things. It gives you a nice audit trail just for your own reference. You know how other people in your organisation are changing and what you're going on. The comments aren't actually put in the report. You've then got any other related assets that you've assigned to this related asset. And a new feature of the tool is the related record. So I will demonstrate this when I go through and actually create the map itself, but it's just worth noting any assets that you've put that related record to, that will show here as well. So going to the top, we've got our hints and tips, the little light bulb icon here. We've then got our search, so if you had all of your assets open on this panel, for example, and you know which one you're looking for, you can type that in. And we can also pull off a report at this moment. So it will give us all the information that we have added about that asset. So you can see if this asset supports any processes, any of those nice to haves that we've added, who owns it, and again, the group that that process sits in. Like so. So as I've got 3 open, it will give me the report for all of those assets that are open on that other panel. Once you're happy with that, you can just cancel or print. So we will then move on to organisation processes. Like so. And when we're going through the tool, I will always show you, I'll just point out, for those of you who already have the tool or have had the tool for a little while or been on the demo within the last month, I'll just highlight those key new features just so you're aware of them, and you can really see the difference and the benefit that the features are implemented for, really. So going on to our organisation processes. So you can see here I've got one that I've created earlier. I will go through with you now, create it again just to demonstrate how this is done. And also, much like assets, we won't have a pre-populated process list. Essentially it is your own organisations and how you work and the processes that your organisation deal with. So first of all, it will ask us to create a process group to which our individual processes sit within. So any related processes will all go within the same group. So to create a process group, select process group. So I'll do the name. So we'll have our sales, and the subtitle of our process group would be web sales, like so. And then it will ask us for a brief description of what that process group is showing. So this would be software sales in the EU, like so. So once you're happy with that, select save. So then it will automatically highlight the one that you've just created, press select, and then it will ask us to add a process. So the title for the particular process we'll add is software sale EU, and I'm going to put number 2 just as I've already had the example process of software sale EU in there. So we'll label it as number 2. So then who owns the process? So for this example, it would be your sales manager. So we'll type in sales manager. And what are they acting? So for this example, I'm going to put them as acting as the processor for that. So you're acting underneath the controls. However, you can select whichever is most relevant to the process that you're adding. So then it will ask for the controller contact details, so you select them. So I'll just pop it in as test for now, but this is what you would add relevant, like so. Like so. So then it will ask if you have a representative, you can add your representative, and how I demonstrated at the very beginning, this is where that would take those information from if you've already inputted that. It'll then ask for a scope of your process, and then the purpose of processing this data. So this would be, for example, sales transactions via the company website, like so. And then any technical and organizational security measures that you have, that's where you would input. Once you're happy with your process, select save, and then it will save it like so. So going through is have the same toolbar as in the organization asset. So you have your search, your implementation status chart, any tips that you might need on this page, and the option to select all of those. So once you, much like the assets as well, once you select on your particular process group, it will open up those processes for you. So like so, as we can see. So these that we skimmed over in the last section, we have our related controls. So again, this will pull through on the compliance manager side of things. So any related controls that are related to this process, so these could be part of the ISO 27001. Anything, as you can see, all you need to do is add it by pressing this plus icon here. And then the little will just give you a brief description of that particular control. Again, that will pull through from the compliance manager side. So once you're happy and you've added any of the related controls that you wish, you can then move over to any related legal requirements. Again, this is working in much of the same way. Any related tasks, task, and then you can add what that task is. You can assign it to a particular owner, and this could be anyone that is a user in the tool, and then you can give this a deadline too. Any related processes that are related to this particular process, they will show here, and you can add that here. Again, we've got our audit trail. The comments aren't shown on the report. They are purely for you and the other members of your organisation, just to have a reference. We then have any related assets. So once we go through and we start build, which I will do in just a few minutes, every asset that we have in our map itself, that's going to show here. And any related records. So like I mentioned in the organisation, it's part of the feature that really helps show that compliance with Article 30, and you can assign these to particular assets as well. It's good if you Cool. Made aware that the sound dropped out then, so just didn't want to carry on talking while you all couldn't hear me, but I've been told that it's back now, so that's cool. We'll start to go through the... When you first go into your process map for the first time, you're going to get have been going through this, but we do and it is worth sort of following this. Jog your memory of everything you might have forgotten from the demo that you watched. Also, if you've got any initial questions, that will help you. Like so, I'll just show you. For example, if we just go to the contents, if there's one particular part that you're struggling on, select it. And then I'll just show you a little video of this and then describe that like so. So it's very useful. So I'll close that. That will always be there though in this little icon like so, and it will only pop up on your first time opening the map. So then we have our export and view report. So I'll go through that at the very end once we've created our map. We have our 4 tools in the middle. These are probably the most used within the tool itself. So we've got our comment tool. So from this, you can leave a comment on either the connection line itself or the particular asset or data subject or the data input. And I will show you, you can either do it with the comment tool. So if we just select that with our comment tool, it will then select that so we can add our comment like so. Then we've got our connection tool. So I will show you that. I will demonstrate that in action once I've created the assets or dropped them onto the map. But essentially, this is to show the direction of the transaction between the data items and the asset. The arrow that is populated is obviously the direction that those data items are flowing in. And also it shows the connection between those 2 assets. We have our move tool. Now this is used to manipulate the map into a lot of different configurations. When you do so, it doesn't break any of those data transfer lines you've created. It's really good. It helps you manipulate that map for as your organization grows. You know, so do your processes, and so do the assets that you add. You might add more, etc. And then this is really handy for that. You then have your hand tool, and the hand tool itself, this is pretty much the most used tool of the map. You can add all the information. This is where you would select those data items as well, and it would open up that right hand side attributes panel, which I will go into in just a few moments. Moving on, we have our more sort of default options that you used to. You zoom in, you zoom out, you remove, and you duplicate. Your redo, going to here. So we will now actually begin to populate the map, and I will demonstrate like so. So once you first open that, you see this arrow. So this is your data. So this is where the data items themselves actually enter the map. So to add an asset to the data map, all you need to do, so I'll also use the search bar here. If I know what asset, all you need to do is select like so, and it will drop it straight onto the map for you. So I'm going to delete this other as we don't need it, like so, with that, the data input. So again, with our move tool, we can move this like so, and then we'll have our data input going to our company sales website. Then the next asset this will go to will be our billing team. So again, all you need to do is select it, and then it will drop it straight onto the map for you. Now, if you get to your map and there's some assets that you haven't entered in your process or your organization assets, that's fine. You can add them at this section. All you need to do is select add asset like so. This will then bring up a new panel like so. And you can select it, it will drop it straight onto the map. So don't worry if you go through those organization assets, you get to your process map itself and there's a key one you've forgotten. That's no worries, not an issue. You can do so here. Also, as you can see, like so, this orange bar, this will come up periodically as it is an online portal. If you're doing this on a guest network, for example, the connection might dip in and out. It will just prompt you to save this periodically, like so. And the save is always at the top. So it's just worth doing every now and then while you're on the tool, like so. So moving on, we'll keep adding our map. So we've got our billing team. It will then go to our service center inbox. Again, drop this onto the map like so. With our move tool, we can move that into the position that we want to do it. So as go through your workshops, go speak to everyone within your about every step of that process. So for this example, we're doing it as I've already done that, so I know exactly which assets, sales fulfillment team, for example. So again, select that, it will drop straight onto the map. But also the personal data items in this example will go to our sales fulfillment team, but they're also going to get processed into that internal SharePoint. So drop that onto the map like so with the move tool. So we can move that here. So this will demonstrate the split of those personal data items, which again, I will go into detail in just a few moments. So then to add our other asset, so after the service center inbox, they will then go to our company server. Like so, again with our move tool, and we drop that on like so. If we go back up this way, so after our sales fulfillment team, this will then go back to our customer. So the part of the process where the data items are returned back to our data subject. So for this example, our data subject is essentially our customer. So that tool is here. Select that, it will drop it straight onto the map, and then you can position this data subject where you need. And then we've got after the sales fulfillment team, it would go to the distributor. Again, select it, drop it onto the map, and then you're able to position this to where you want. So you can also, once you've added all of those, again, you can add your assets as you go along, and we'll collapse that like so. So then we've just got the whole of our map like so. So after we've put all of the assets on there, we'll go through and show how that connection tool works and how we define our legitimate basis or lawful basis for processing this data and the particular data items that are being moved through. So with this connection tool like so, we've got between our data input and our first asset. So until you have the orange circle in the first instance, select your mouse, move that across, and then select your mouse, and you'll show the data connection like so. Once you've added the first connection between your data input and your first asset, you can then use the hand tool, select your data input, and this will open up your right-hand side attribute panel. So from here, our data source, so that is in fact our data subject, the reference, so we'll put customer as our data subject is our customer. The method, so in this instance, it would be data entry, as they have manually entered their input when they've gone on that company sales website and they've purchased whatever they've purchased. However, you can select from this drop-down menu like so, and you can select other to really customize this to your particular organization. And you can also choose here whether your data is encrypted. If your data is encrypted, what are those encryption details? So for example, here, ours would be HTTPS, like so. So then the all important part, add in the actual data itself. So this is where the new features come into play slightly here too. So there are two ways you can do it. I will show you both for the purpose of this webinar. So if you have data that separates, you are able to add the individual data items like so. So go to data items, it will ask you for the data subject. So for this example, our data subject is our customer. So I'll select that. You can select from any of this pre-populated list, and also in that settings section at the very beginning, you can customize these, add your own customized one, and this is where it would show up at the bottom. So we'll go to customers. It will then ask us to add our personal data items. So whichever's relevant to your process. So for this, it would be our address they would add, say their credit card number, their email address, their phone number, and their name, for example. Again, you can choose from any of this section here. And of course, if you add those customized personal data items in the settings section, this would come under here. If there's any sensitive data items you've added, then that's fine. You can add these here, like so, if these are moving through your process themselves. And like I mentioned, the lawful basis. So what is your lawful basis for actually processing these data items, whether it's consent, contractual necessity, compliance, vital interest, or public interest. Like so. So once you're happy with that, you could then save and then apply, and this will apply to that connection line. And as you can see, it's pre-populated it with 5. So I'll just quickly, before I go through the rest of the map, show you the example of the create a record. So the creating a record, now this is what I mentioned, this is a new feature. If you know things are moving through your process as a whole, then this is where you can create that record, and then you can move that record throughout your process. So just for example, I'm just going to label these in the data items. It's going to ask us our data subject, what personal data items, for example, we'll just add these like so. Again, any sensitive data items that you have and what that lawful basis is. So you save that, apply, and then that's why you can now see the pre-populated number of 10. So you go through, and with our connection tool, I'm just going to connect all of those like so. So you can see the arrow. I will go through and just mention why that has the exclamation mark there. That is actually a third country transfer, which I will explain in just a moment. So again, we're just going through and we're just showing the direction of those traveling, and then we'll go through and populate it with those data items. So as you can see, the arrow is the direction it's being moved through. Back to the hand tool. So we'll select on the company website like so. So it's got all of that asset information that you've already entered, your web application, your company sales website, etc., and any data that's encrypted. You can also add comments at this point. Here, storage. So if you know how long for example, your record is being stored, you can toggle this on, and then you can declare that like so. So apply. So then moving to the next connection, we've got the method. So how are those data items moving between your company sales website and the billing team? So for example, it could be any of these like so. So we'll choose system to system, and again, you've got the selection of other if none of these fit. And then we can add encryption details. So to add data, so like I mentioned, you can either choose to add your record, so this is when your data items are being moved as a whole, or you can add your data items individually, and then in that case, if any of them aren't being transferred at that moment, you can exit like so. So we'll do both of them for now, like that, and then apply, and then as you can see it's popped with the number 10, as that's how many data items are being moved through. So again, we go onto our billing team, we've got the information of that asset and that storage like so. Then to our next connection line, so the method, so between the billing team and service center inbox, this would be, for example, email. Again, any comments and whether that data is encrypted. So we'll add the data like so. So if it's just the data items, or if you've got those records, you can add those. We'll save that. And then we'll go from our service center inbox to our company server. So at the moment, you can see this red exclamation mark. That's because if we select the company server, we can see that the location is actually in the Bahamas. So it's non-EEA, it's a third country transfer. And in order to process data to a third country, we're going to need some appropriate safeguards in place. So that's what that exclamation mark is really prompting us for this. So it will ask us to declare the appropriate safeguards that we've got in place, like so, from this drop-down menu, for example. Once you're happy, apply, and then that warning will go away because you've declared those. So select here again, we'll just add the data, so it'll be all of the data items, like so. Save and apply. So where we've got the personal data items and the record, this is where the point in our process where they split, and we could no longer transfer the record as a whole. So for example, your service center inbox to the sales fulfillment team, if we go onto them, we'll go to add data, the data items particularly. So for example, that sales fulfillment team wouldn't need their credit card number, so we could remove that like so, and then select save. The method that it would reach there, again, this is probably via email in this instance, apply, and then you can see that that demonstrates that one of those data items hasn't been processed to that particular asset, and again, the same with this. So the method would be system to system, and we'd add the data, so we'd select our data items, not the record as a whole, and then we'd remove that credit card number, like so. And then here, if we select on our data subject, the reference, so we can change this to our customer and where they're located. So they would be in the UK, for example. Any comments? So for example, let's see. Sent back to the customer, like so. Apply. And then that would add that to there. So we'll save. So like I mentioned, it's always worth saving it periodically, just to ensure if you were ever on a guest network, you know, just in case that sort of flitted, you would never lose your work. So between our sales fulfillment team and our distributor, again, we'll select that. The method, system to system, for example, and adding our data. We've got our data items, all of those would go. So we'd select save and apply. And then that's how you work through your map. So obviously this is a very basic map that I've created for this webinar. You would use that, you know, to the extent that your organization requires. For example, the move tool, how I mentioned that you can manipulate it, like so, just to add and really build out your process map. And whatever shape that you do manipulate this into, those connection lines that you've already made, they will never break, so you don't have to worry about that. So also, we'll just go back to here quickly. So now I have actually populated that map. You can see in the grey here, the light grey, these are all the assets that we actually have on that process map. And then in the darker grey here, this is just our asset library in its entirety. So we'll collapse that again, and we'll go through the report. So it's worth mentioning that you can actually export the report that you pull off at this stage into a Word document, for example. With this, you're able to have full editing capabilities. This is really handy. You can really customize it to your own organization, and you can add your own logos, for example, to really tailor that to you. So, for example, we'll go through this report. So we'll have our contact details like so. So what we're acting as, so we're a processor for this particular process. The processor name and contact details, so that would be myself, and who that controller is, so when you've added them in like so. Then it will give us a nice overview of this particular process. So what the name of that process is, what the scope statement is, and why you are actually processing that personal data, who owns this process, and the technical and organizational security measures you would have to have in. It will then give us a summary, so whether it processes any sensitive data, cross-border processing, and any transfers to locations out of the EEA. So as you can see, it does include these transfers. It will then give us a view of the map itself, like so. So you can see that, very clearly. You can see the transfer like so. It will then give us our personal data inventory. So like I mentioned at the very beginning, for those of you who have been using this for a while, this will look different, and this is the new feature. So where now you can demonstrate where those personal data items are moved in a record and which assets have those records. The records will also show on the report. So we've got the record name that we created. We've got the classification, the format that it's being saved in, the retention period of that record, and the recipient of that record. The data item here, the list, will be all the data items that are associated with that particular record, like so. Going down, so where the other part of it was where we added the data items as individuals and not as part of a record, that's where that would show here. And the NA is not applicable because they're not associated with a particular record, but you still have these data items like so, and the lawful basis. We then have our data subjects that are involved in this process. So ours are our customer. They're located in the United Kingdom, and we had that comment of the receipt sent back attached to it. However, the actual comment itself won't appear. We then have our asset register like so. Again, this will just show you all of the assets that are on the map. So we've got our company sales website, our billing team, our service center inbox, etc., where each of these is located, the operator, like so, any encryption details, any records that are selected for that asset, and any comments like so. We then have any, just going back to the assets, sorry, it's just worth noting the purple assets, these are owned by the controller. So the controller will be automatically the account that is set up, so Vigilant Demo Amy, and the green is essentially everything else. And again, that's why the symbol there is. We then have our transfers here. So this will show us each of, in the table formula, each of these transfers between the two assets, which personal data items are being transferred between those two assets. As you can see, the method of that data transfer, who they're transferred from, who they're transferred to, any encryption details that you've included, whether that's a third country transfer, and just whether there are any comments. The comments themselves won't actually appear. So here you can see the third party transfer. We've got the safeguard is legally binding enforceable instrument. Cool. So that concludes the report, which does also conclude the webinar, other than the Q&A section that we now have around 20 minutes for. So I'll just save that, like I mentioned, and I'm just going to go back to here. We'll just close that like so.